On the second day of Draft Miss, Locked On Commanders is bringing to you two reporters reporting. Desmond Purnell, WSA 9, Nicki Jhabvala of the Washington Post, coming through on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this episode of Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. And don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. And you can continue this conversation with me by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Sign up today as an insider, and you will get news, analysis, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. No hashtags, no apps, no filters, none of that stuff, just content, live conversation, and bonus content coming. So again, join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to join the ever-growing group of insiders. I'm David Harrison, credential member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's FanNation, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And everydayers, especially the Drake May everydayers, going to give you a shout out here in just a little bit. Appreciate your continued support for the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I've got a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go today, now for free on the App Store or Google Play. That's Monopoly Go. On today's episode, we're going to hear from Nicki Jhabvala of the Washington Post. But first, we're going to catch up with WUSA 9 sports anchor Desmond Purnell. And with both of them, we're talking everything from quarterback, draft picks, updates, progress reports, and analysis evaluations on how the new group of Washington Commanders leaders are doing today. Let's start it off with Desmond Purnell. Happy to be joined now on the show by Desmond Purnell at Desmond Purnell on Twitter, WUSA 9 sports anchor. Desmond, glad to have you finally on the show. We've talked about this a couple of times, finally able to get you here, man. I appreciate you coming through, and let's just jump right into the sexiest, hottest topic. Everybody's talking about it. With the number 2 overall pick, the Washington Commanders are going to select who?
Well, we know it's pretty much a two-man race between UNC's Drake May and LSU quarterback Jayden Daniels. I think the consensus is pretty much Jayden Daniels. I don't know how you couldn't go against him based off of his ability to make plays. The job he's done at LSU is, again, the quarterback's number one job, David, is to what? Protect the football. This man threw for 40 touchdowns and only 4 interceptions in the SEC. You're talking to a former Mississippi State Bulldog, David. I played my football at Mississippi State. So I think, if you can have that type of success in the SEC, you can definitely duplicate that on a high level in the NFL. So it's no disrespect to Drake May. I don't think anyone should be surprised if the Commanders go that route. But Jayden Daniels, if you really listen to what the coaching staff say they are looking for in a quarterback, he fits the description, someone that can make plays. Again, this offensive line, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit later, go back to last season, what they allowed the second most sacks last year. Sam Howell was on the run quite a bit. So, it's good to have that luxury of having a quarterback that can use his legs. But while saying that, I don't want to take away from what Jayden Daniels can do with his arm. I think that's an underrated part of his game. I think sometimes we focus so much on his athleticism. We get that, hey, he does have an exceptional arm. So that would be my pick. I think a lot of other people see it that way as well. And Cliff Kingsbury, I think he's going to have a lot of say on this as well, David. I feel like if you go all the way back to when he was the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M and he had what's our guy's name that won the Heisman, went on to play for the Cleveland Browns.
At A&M, Johnny Manziel. Yep.
I feel like ever since he coached Johnny Manziel, he's been infatuated with the mobile quarterback. So all signs tend to point towards Jayden Daniels with that number 2 overall pick. Yeah. What do you say? How you see it?
Oh, I'm on the same page, and my everydayers already know that, and some of my everydayers, and I got to give credit to my everydayers who are also Drake May guys, because they have been listening to me every day, basically talk about Jayden Daniels being the pick, and they come through and they say, look, I still think Drake is is the guy. And Des, I've got a rule on my show that agreeing with me is not a prerequisite to watch the show. Like, you don't have to agree with me. I'm more than willing to enter into, discourse on differing opinions, as long as they, of course, stay above the belt. But that's the next question, Des. Like, how close is it? Like, is it Jaden by a mile and then Drake May is just kind of there? And then also, I mean, JJ McCarthy has been getting some, I would say, external love, right? Nothing that like fully concrete from inside the team, but there's a lot of people now who are almost like, well, JJ McCarthy from the analytics standpoint and all this stuff might make more sense than even Drake May. Do you have Drake May a close second, or is JJ even maybe that second quarterback for you, just for discussion purposes?
I don't have it close, to be honest. Yeah. I think Jaden, again, he's the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. It's not a close race to me, but I was at Drake May's pro day, David, at UNC. I was there in Chapel Hill, and I saw Cliff Kingsbury and UNC offensive coordinator Chip Lindsey. They were together the entire time. And that's one parallel that UNC, Drake May, and Cliff Kingsbury have. They ran the air raid there at Chapel Hill. So, and you can't talk about the air raid without mentioning Cliff Kingsbury. So they were very like hands-on. I saw them talking with them. I saw them laughing with them. It was impressive to see. So I think that the Commanders brass, they definitely have a high amount of respect for Drake May. In Drake May's defense, I think he had a very exceptional pro day, threw 70 passes. There were a few he said he wanted back. But for the most part, the one thing that we can all agree on with Drake May, the arm strength, the arm talent, it's all there. And he showed that during his pro day. Now, the things that he said he wanted to make more noticeable was his footwork, his ability to throw and run, his ability, how he moves within the pocket. He wants people to know that, like, hey, he's not a statue back there. And I think sometimes people forget that Drake May, he's the only player in college football to throw over 7,000 yards and to have 1,000 yards rushing over the past 2 seasons. So, again, he's not as athletic as Jaden Daniels, but from what I saw in person, he's going to be an exceptional pro once he gets to the next level. I just don't think he's going to be as good as Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part to remember. Like, just because someone picks Jaden Daniels doesn't mean they think Drake is bad or JJ is bad or Michael Penix Jr. is bad. It's just this is the one that fits more. And
it's
makes
funny
the most
talk about JJ, David. I'd rather talk about Penix. I think based off what I saw him do in the college football playoffs, I think he's going to. When it's all said and done, he may be the one that has the best career out of all these quarterbacks we're talking about, including Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I mean, look, I like all 5 of those guys, and I say that even in Bo Nix. It's not that I don't like Bo Nix. I just honestly haven't studied a lot of Bo Nix, so I can't really tell you that I like or dislike him. But I like all 5 of those guys, and I do. I really think there's 5 quarterbacks in this draft that if they go to the right teams, if those teams take care of them the right way, they can lead successful franchises. So again, there's no necessarily wrong answer. It's just what you do with that answer that you pick. And Des, that's kind of the next question. Outside of quarterback, what do the Washington Commanders need to add to this roster from what they've already done this offseason to help whoever it is, Jaden, Drake, or anybody else?
This is something me and my sports partner at WUSA 9, Chick Hernandez, we go back and forth over that a lot because I look at the fact that Dan Quinn is their head coach. And Dan Quinn is a guy that when I worked for the NFL Network, I covered him when he was with the Falcons. And I also covered him. I lived in Dallas. I worked in Dallas for 17 years. So I got a chance to cover him when he was with the Cowboys. So, and I don't think it's a secret, when the Cowboys selected Michael Parsons, a few years back in the NFL draft out of Penn State, that wasn't a Mike McCarthy pick. That was a Dan Quinn pick. So I'm mindful of that. I think they understand that they have to get it right at the quarterback position with the number 2 overall pick. I feel that, after they got rid of Montez Sweat, the Commanders did last year, and they traded away Chase Young, man, they really struggled to get after the quarterback. I mean, I think it's undeniable. They're towards the bottom of the league as far as pressuring the quarterback last year. But so I would not be offended if they went for an edge rusher. But with all that being said, I'm getting to where I'm going, David. Bear with me. But with all that being said, if you're gonna spend your number 2 overall pick on a quarterback, who's going to be the face of the franchise. He's going to shape the future of that franchise. You have to put somebody there to protect his blind side. So, again, I really think they need to address some issues on the defensive side of the ball. They have a lot of holes they need to address, but finding someone at that tackle position, especially after they got rid of Leno Jr. during the offseason, who had been their starting left tackle the previous 3 years. I think they have to do something to address that hole first and foremost.
More with Desmond Purnell and Nicki Jhabvala of the Washington Post coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die vehicle alive. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors, and eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They've got superchargers, they've got roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're looking for speed, trying to add power, or looking for a little bit of style for your ride, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're going to burn rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Thanks again for making Locked On Commanders your first listen, your first view today and every day, everydayers. Make sure you come back tomorrow. We will be one episode away from the first round of the NFL draft kicking off. Locked On NFL Mock Draft is also available right now. The ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft is available for you to hear who the local experts of Locked On are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on Locked On NFL Draft, on YouTube, or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Now let's get back to my conversation with WSA 9 sports anchor Desmond Purnell. Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you need a passer, you need pass protection, pass rushing, playmakers, and pass defenders. So those five things, if you're not addressing those 5 things really in every NFL draft, then I think you're steering your franchise down the wrong path. And right now, when you look at pass rushers, pass defenders, or pass protectors, I think pass protectors stands out as the biggest hole. But Des, that's because the Commanders have brought in a good amount of pass rushers, not just defensive ends, but linebacker Frankie Louvu is expected to be an impact player there. Maybe Jeremy Chin, Bobby Wagner. Sorry, Bobby. Bobby Wagner as a general on the field, right? For the defense, like set everybody up in the right place to help that pass rush. Maybe he himself, not the most prolific pass rusher, but certainly putting guys in the right place, making the right calls. How do you think the Commanders have done so far, Des, from a 4-win season with not a whole lot of direction, it seemed like, at the end of last year, to now? Again, it's all on paper, right? Nothing has been put on the field yet, but how much progress do you think this team has really made?
They're in a better spot. And again, I want to add Dorrance Armstrong, Cowboys defensive end that they brought in during the offseason as well. I think he'll come in and make some impactful plays, as he did with the Dallas Cowboys over the past few seasons. But overall, I think they've done well. I like what they've done at the running back position. They've brought a few offensive linemen in to add a little bit more stability. They need a little bit more, and hopefully they can fill those holes in the draft. But I think based off what we've seen, Adam Peters, he's doing the job that we all expected him to do. This isn't going to happen overnight, David. I don't, I hope your listeners aren't, living in a world of delusion and grandeur, but it's not going to happen next year. I mean, I do think that they'll be better than 4 games. I think they've done enough already for us to see that. And just Coach Quinn, what he brings from a team morale standpoint. I mean, David, go back to you were in that locker room when they were packing up their lockers at the end of the season, and we heard all the players they looked defeated, they sounded frustrated. The morale, they were itching, they were starving for change. When you got Dan Quinn at the helm, like, I don't know, I can just tell you from watching him in Dallas players on the offensive side of the football, players on special teams, and of course his defensive players. They gravitated towards him. They loved him. They run through a wall for him. And if they gave him 100%, David, I promise you, he doubled that. So just from what he's going to bring from a schematical standpoint, what he's going to bring from just energizing that locker room, making people feel included, making them feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, that alone is going to get them more than 4 wins. But we'll see how they do in the draft. Again, they got 6 picks within the top 100. They got a chance to supplement what they've already done during the offseason. They've had a solid offseason. The draft is going to kind of tell the story, but is it enough to get them in the postseason? No. I don't think you see that dramatic of a change. But the following season, I would not be surprised to see this Commanders team competing for a playoff spot.
Absolutely. Yeah. I tell my listeners that I'm a hype season guy. Like, I love the offseason hype. I steer into the offseason hype because I just feel like enjoy it while you can. Look, by October, we might be talking NFL draft again. You know what I mean? I don't know. I can't promise you that. And here's the ironic thing, Des. I said last year with Sam Howell as the starting quarterback, all the excitement about the defense coming back and being really good again and all this stuff. I remember saying to the listeners during training camp, I can't promise you this team's not going to win 14 games. I can't promise you they're going to win more than 4 games. And the irony of the fact that they only won 4 games, I did not intend to set that mark, but I was not expecting that mark there. But yeah, I mean, look, you celebrate the offseason, enjoy it. I remember all the fans out of training camp, super hyped up, enjoy those memories, even though the season that followed did not support those memories. Just enjoy it while you can. But yeah, keep expectations real. We haven't seen these guys on the field yet. Rookie camp coming up after the draft, and then we've got our first full team or veteran camp shortly after that. And then we'll finally start to see this product getting put together on the field. But Des, I think everybody can agree there's a lot of excitement about what is happening, potentially moving towards the future. So I appreciate you coming here on Locked On Commanders, joining us, letting my listeners know a little about what you got going on Twitter at Desmond Purnell. Make sure you're all following him. Always jealous of people who just use their names as Twitter handles. I got to get creative and use initials and numbers and all this craziness. WUSA 9 sports anchor. So make sure you're checking that out. If you're not local, you still check it out online. So make sure you're checking out everything Des and Chick are doing. Des, thank you, man.
Oh, no problem, David. And hey, we're looking forward to seeing you make an appearance on WUSA 9 News tonight at 6 and 11. So it goes both ways, man. We appreciate you, David.
Great stuff from Desmond Purnell there. Again, WUSA 9's sports anchor, local here in the DMV in Washington, D.C. So make sure you're checking him out. Always great to speak to Desmond. Haven't had him on the show up until now, so it's great for you guys to hear some of the conversation that we have on the air. Definitely going to have to do that again very soon. But for now, let's kick back over to the Washington Post's Nicki Jhabvala. All right, everybody, joined now by Nicki Javala on Twitter at Nicki Jhabvala, NFL reporter for the Washington Post, and hands down the best default ringtone in Ashburn. Nicki, every time your ringtone goes off, I get hyped up. I get ready to run through a wall. I absolutely love it. It's Jay-Z for all of those out there interested. It's good stuff. So I know you get a little bit embarrassed every time it goes off, but I promise, everybody, it makes everybody's day better, I think, when it goes off. So,
well, that's my intent. I think there's a few that are a little surprised that that's my ringtone, but
I was the first time. I have to be honest, I was the first time, and I think it was a couple days later. I was just going through Twitter, and I happened to see the banner on your Twitter profile, and I was like, it all makes sense. It all makes sense now. It's Byron Rapper, so yet another person who I'm jealous of because you get to have your name as your Twitter handle and no numbers involved or abbreviations. Yeah, so
there's not that many Jhabvalas roaming around. So
yeah. Absolutely. So Nicki, thanks for joining us here. Let's jump right into it. Adam Peters, you asked him the question about the potential of coming out of day one with multiple picks instead of just the number 2 overall pick. And that's something that's obviously been a topic on a lot of people's minds. So the question I have for you is, after hearing that, but also just looking at these team needs, looking at the tackles, like Adam mentioned, in the mock drafts coming off the board pretty quickly in the first round, how aggressive do you think he needs to be in order to move back in that first round? How big of a need do you think that position group specifically could be in order for him to need to move back into day one?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on how the quarterbacks go. Because a lot of the teams that need quarterbacks also need tackles. So if it's, a long run on quarterbacks and, some of these receivers definitely need to go in the first round or worthy of that. It's hard to say now. It just depends on how it plays out. And, they could very well sit at, with that high second round pick, they could very well sit there and still get a top tackle. But I think having the resources they do this year, just with the number of picks in the top 100, the cap space, not that the cap space is really affected by the rookie pool. It's constant, but I think they have the ammo they want and need to get, a lot of these premium positions locked up. So I think it's a real possibility. But I think it also depends on kind of how the start to the first round goes.
More with Nikki coming up next as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're doing that thanks to our friends from Monopoly Go. We have all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime. The scoreboard is looking terrible. You're feeling bad about yourself, about your team, about the nachos you just ate, whatever it is. You're not sure that your team is going to pull out the victory. That's when you got to dig deep, lift your head up, and just say to yourself out loud, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. No, this is not a bad Hollywood movie. It is the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go, which lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and be the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress against your buddies. There's so much for you to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, charge other players rent for your iconic properties for sitting on your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, download Monopoly Go now for free at the App Store or on Google Play. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, let's get back to our conversation with Nicki Jhabvala of the Washington Post. Yeah, absolutely. And then the idea of trading back as well, I think is something that a lot of people are talking about. And when you look at this offseason, a lot of one-year deals, even some of the 2 or 3 year deals are deals they could easily get out of if they really needed to or felt the need to down the road. So it almost feels like this team is or this new regime is kind of like, let's put a bunch of people in place, see how it works out, and then we'll move forward from there once we have a year of functional knowledge of this roster. Do you think the likelihood is high that Adam could even trade back in a couple of these places, try to net some capital for future years when they have a better grasp of who they have on the roster, where they want to move forward?
Sure. I mean, I do think the way they're going about this is pretty strategic to build through the draft. I mean, a lot, like you said, a lot of these veterans are on 1-2 year deals to kind of lay the foundation, set the tone, and before these rookies really come in and learn the way and how they want to do things. So, and doing that in free agency allows them to build through the draft. So I would be surprised if they don't go after these premium positions that you really do try to get through the draft. Quarterback, O-line. I mean, they've got to add not just a tackle, but another guard there too. And really build up that unit as a core, and then, add some other key positions, another corner, another pass rusher. So I would be surprised if they don't come away with, those positions and possibly, whether it's trade up or trade down, find some way to get the core of their team, at least the beginning stages together here.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you've been on the beat for a while. You've been around the NFL for a while. I've seen a lot of stories, some more serious, some kind of ridiculous. I want to get your thought on Topgolf. Not just Topgolf, but 4 quarterbacks coming in at once, 20 prospects coming in at once, Topgolf, all that. How much do you really make of all that stuff going on?
I don't really. I mean, it's unusual, sure. I mean, there are other teams that have groups of prospects. It's unusual to have, 4 of the top quarterbacks in at the same time, but it was really just the golfing that was the group activity. They had individual meetings. For efficiency's sake, it makes sense. Is it as individualized as traditional ones? No, but I also think top 30s are for informational gathering. They're not honorary visits. This is not, oh, hey, we love you, let's show you how much. So I thought it was incredibly overblown, and the fact that we're dissecting people's emojis is just, so that's a bit much for me. I'm not interested. So.
In the world of 5-day-a-week podcasting, unfortunately, it's a topic, so we have to talk about it. We did talk about it, but hopefully this is the last time we have to talk about it.
In the world of Twitter or X or whatever it's called, it's always a topic.
Yeah, absolutely. On to something more serious now. Josh Harris, coming up on a full year of owning the team. What do you think of the job he's done so far? And we know there's even more being done just in Ashburn specifically. The stadium's got more upgrades. Obviously, the roster, the coaching staff is different. What do you think of what Josh has been able to do here in just about a calendar year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all positive. I mean, most of his changes are just now happening. Year one, a lot of the staff was status quo. they went 4-13 with, coaches that were hired by a previous regime. So, I think they've done as much as they possibly could before the season and have continued to do more with the current stadium. They continue to work toward a new stadium. I think Adam Peters was a very good hire. Hopefully it pans out. I'm hesitant to call any sort of hire like a masterful hire or anything until there's results.
Yeah.
You hope Dan Quinn and his staff can do the same. So I like the method and sort of the thinking of where they're going with all this, but ultimately wins matter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And on paper, it looks good, right? But let's stick to Peters and Quinn right there. I mean, again, you've been through coaching changes, GM changes. You've heard more coach speak than I think a lot of people on this beat. Mm-hmm. What do you think of the coach speak and the GM speak you're hearing from these two guys? I know the message sounds good, but how much of it do you think is going to result in actual action?
Yeah, I mean, I think Adam Peters doesn't say much, obviously, but in the times he has spoken, he's been honest. Just in the fact that he wants to build through the draft. Well, he's actually doing that. It's not just lip service this time. Wanting to stay at number 2. We'll see if he actually does it, but that is seeming to be true. So it's little nuggets, but he's not giving you broad lies. And I think Dan Quinn, pretty similar. You hear nothing but good things. Very different coach from Ron Rivera, but also very similar, just in their mannerisms, the way they go about it, the way players regard them. But, you hope you have different outcome on the field, but a lot of the same qualities that Rivera had. So I think it's been really good to start. I like sort of how they've approached it together. I'm sick of hearing aligned vision. It's PR speak, and I just don't care. But to their credit, they do seem to be on the same page for what we know so far. Now, they could come out after the draft and say, we were totally split on this quarterback, which they won't. But, it seems like they're in pretty lockstep with the guys they've brought in so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like you mentioned before, the product on the field is going to determine how well everything really goes. And that's when you find out if everybody's really in the same pointing in the same direction, is when things don't go as easily. So it all starts with the number 2 overall pick, right? Adam said they seem pretty comfortable. They're pretty comfortable sitting at number 2. Don't really see a situation where they're probably going to trade out of that pick. A lot of people say it's going to be Jaden Daniels. There's still a good amount of people who think it needs to be Drake May, and even some people apparently in the analytics world who think it should be JJ McCarthy. So Nikki, number 2, if you got to make a prediction, and I know you've made some before. I saw a mock draft that you were involved in, so I think I know the answer anyway. But number 2 overall, who do you got the Washington Commanders taking on Thursday night?
Yeah, I would say Jaden Daniels, and that's purely just a hunch. It's not based on, and they're not talking. So, I wish I had more like team insight to offer, but I just think he's the full package. I think you could make the argument that he's the best quarterback in the draft. I know there are others that believe, Caleb Williams is far and away the top pick. Mm-hmm. The Bears are among them. So I just think he's a dynamic playmaker, a accurate, strong passer who happens to be a dangerous runner. So, hard to pass up on that.
Yeah, look, and I lost Curtis Hodges. He was the only Sun Devil in the locker room the last couple of years. So Jaden Daniels, LSU by way of Arizona State, I'd be more than happy to welcome another Sun Devil into the locker room. Nicki Jhabvala, of course, great work for the Washington Post. As always, appreciate you coming through, Nicki. Everybody follow her if you're not already, at Nicki Jhabvala on Twitter. Nicki, thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right. Big thanks once again to Desmond Purnell, sports anchor over at WSA9, and Nicki Jhabvala, reporter for the Washington Post. Coming up tomorrow, it's one day to draft miss, which means I've got one more gift for all of you before we get to Thursday night's first round of the NFL drafts. Come back for that. And in the meantime, if you got questions or comments, throw them down in the YouTube comment section or text me directly by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to get in on that. I will be texting insiders during the NFL draft live from Ashburn, Virginia. So if you want to get in on that fun, go ahead and sign up today. Don't forget to check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 live streaming sports channel on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day. Thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. Until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.